Please let me welcome our Defense and Space Commissioner Andrius Kubilius to the stage. And this one for you. Yes, we're sitting down. So let me, first of all, thank you for joining our European Industry Forum. And let me start our conversation by coming back to the Defense Readiness Roadmap 2030, because the Commission presented it in October last year. And I wanted to ask you about your assessment. How do you assess the progress that the member states have done since then? And is Europe becoming stronger and more independent in defense?
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation, and really good to be here. Now the question, are we doing progress? Are we becoming stronger? Definitely, we are doing progress. We are becoming stronger. The question is perhaps different. How strong we need to be, and from where we started our road. So we started really from quite a challenging situation. We are moving ahead. But as always in life, challenges which you overcame are smaller than the challenges in front of you. So, really what we did last year and then during this year, we are solving financial problems with all the different instruments which we started to implement, safe loans, now Ukraine support loan. Member states are starting to spend much more. But we see still the problems that, for example, according to publicly available numbers, still Russia is quite heavily outproducing us. Our production is not growing so rapidly as we would like to see. So from one side, I consider that this difference in Russian production capabilities towards us is really quite threatening. Second, what we see also is that when money is increasing more rapidly than production is increasing, then we're facing inflation of prices. We see, longer waiting times, and that can become public, political issue later during this year, when the questions will be really how we're spending the money. So that is, in short, that is my evaluation of the situation.
Precisely, member states are spending more in defense than they have done in decades. But are they spending better, and are they spending more together?
Well, what a good question. Again, it's a systematic and structural problem which we need to resolve. It's not enough to enjoy that our percentage of defense spending is increasing, that more money is coming. Definitely, we need to see how we are spending the money, how to spend those money better, and how to resolve some structural problems in our defense industry, which were very well described by Mario Draghi in his famous report. I will not repeat, but fragmentation is one of those, big issues, which means that we do not have single market in defense. And I see that as really a big strategic problem for us. I spoke recently on several occasions, exactly about that. We are ready to produce at the end of this month so-called communication on single defense market. I can tell you just few numbers which are publicly available, and exactly today I saw just now, that Guntram Wolf, well-known expert, published an article, very interesting piece in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, where he says that, for example, they look through all the contracts of German Bundeswehr, and around more than, I think that it's closer to 70% of what defense industry is producing in Germany is procured by German government, by German militaries. I did my own, research. I saw even bigger numbers, more than 70%. The same is with, for example, with France. And around of 80% of procurement goes through direct award, using TFEU, the Treaty on Functioning of European Union, the famous Article 346, which allows not to use public procurement rules in the case of security exemption, so-called. So, which means that really it does not allow us to have a single market, which in my view is also the consequence of that is that there is no enough of space for startups and small and medium-sized enterprises to grow up, and and here comes also the consequences. How much our big industries, big primes, are influencing when the governments are buying everything what they are producing, how much they are influencing also war doctrines or defense doctrines. And that is why I asked myself, and publicly I asked the question, very simple. After Marco Rubio said that Ukrainian military forces are the best in Europe, I do not argue with him. We have military people here, military committee chairman, so this is for him to decide. But we can consider that really Ukrainians are very strong with their military capabilities. I asked myself, what are the reasons? And my point is that this is not only that they have very brave soldiers, very smart commanders, but also that they managed to create very innovative defense industry. And that changed a lot.
What can be done from Brussels about this, about procurement? Is this something just for the capitals? Can you do something from here to fix this problem?
Well, everything is possible, but my point is that really, first of all, what we need to see that a lot of those problems which we are now facing are basically based in some kind of, how to say, constitutional arrangements in European Union that, according to the treaty, defense policy is very much, national prerogative. And then we have, 27 defense policies, we have 27 defense budgets and so on. I'm always saying, asking, to compare with the United States. Would the United States will become stronger if they would have, instead of federal, policy and federal budget for defense, 50 budgets and so on. So that is, we need to think about that. And the question is how we can overcome those issues, those problems. In my view, we need to find a way how to balance this, what I call bottom-up approach, with much more of top-down influence. And that is why I am speaking and we are discussing, and in the parliament I see also quite a big interest to look into possibility to have European Defense Union as a new some kind of arrangement among all the European countries, including Ukraine, including United Kingdom and so on. And that would allow us also to look into possibility to create what we call European Security Council. Coordinated, smaller body, but with influential members, and with possibility really to have a platform where, much more of this coordination of political agenda, of strategies, big questions which demands answers, how we shall develop European pillar of NATO and so on, would be really possible to be much more effective in that development, and also having overcoming the problem of unanimity, which still we have from time to time.
And do you also see appetite from the capitals about developing all of these ideas, the European Security Council, the European Defense Union, or do you think that we should instead try to do something similar like what we did with the Euro, or through an intergovernmental body?
Well, first of all, I see that in some capitals, not everywhere, but in some capitals, there is a wish to start to ask, big questions. And I'm always quoting, well, first of all, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who a few months ago, during Ambassadors' Conference, raised very clear, big question, what I call. She did not give an answer, but in the question was almost you could understand the answer. And the question was more or less like that. Does our foreign policy and security policy, of course, doctrines, institutions, and decision-making, are they fit for today's challenges? They were built during peacetime, and now we see totally different situation. And that question allows to understand that really there are some doubts about, if that arrangement is fitting, if that architecture is fitting. Then I saw a very similar question months ago, maybe, raised by German Foreign Affairs Minister, Waderpool. Absolutely the same. Are our institutions, are they fit or not, for the challenges of today? So it means that the questions of what I call institutional readiness. I'm always repeating that you asked me about defense readiness. I'm always repeating that we need to see three pillars of that defense readiness. One is material, weapons, money, production, procurement, and so on. Second is institutional defense readiness, exactly how we are organizing ourselves, how we are making decisions. And the third one is political defense readiness, but that's another topic. So on institutional defense readiness, we have more and more questions and push for real big debates inside of Europe and inside of European Union.
And about this top-down approach that you're mentioning, do you think this is the solution to overcome this existing fragmentation? And do you feel like these tensions with the capitals, because my question for you is basically the Commission is doing defense industrial policy, and this is something that we were not doing in the past. So do you feel like we're trying to build the house without the foundation, let's say?
First of all, when I am talking about top-down approach, I'm not talking that, let's forget bottom-up approach. We need to have a balanced approach. So really, both member states need to have clear, possibilities to decide on important issues, but also we need to have much better possibility to coordinate our activities. And I would like to remind that all those ideas about European Security Council, which I raised back at the beginning of this year, and now they are discussed on all the different forums and by different experts, but I was not original. They were raised, those proposals were raised by President Macron and Chancellor Angela Merkel back in 2018. So, and with very clear understanding why we need to do that. If we want to, again, to understand what we need to do with our defense, and defense, how we need to move towards more unity on our defense, you should not listen to my speeches. You should read Jean-Claude Juncker's speech in 2017. It looks like that he is speaking now, about all the problems which we are still facing. So it means that really there is, now the difference from 2017 is perhaps that we are facing much more clear challenges, threats, and I would call crises in security and defense, and that is, like Jean Monnet was saying always, that European Union, European community will be built during the crisis, and what will be built during the crisis, what institutions will be built, that will be European Union. So now we are starting to understand that really we need to build new capacities, new institutional capabilities in order to become much stronger in our defense.
And coming back to the material readiness that you were mentioning before, we see that money is on the table, we see that the demand signal is clear, but then we're complaining at the same time about how the European defense industry is not scaling up fast enough. So what's failing? What do you think that's missing here, or what can we do to get to the levels required?
I said one, basic issue is lack of single market. So this is, basic principles. And if you are talking with, when you're talking with defense industry, they are naming several very clear problems. One is, bureaucratic obstacles, but that is more or less the same with single market, because when I'm looking into what kind of obstacles we are still keeping, like lack of certification, or let's say harmonization of certification. A certificate issued in one country for produced weapon systems will not be applied in another country. Testing results will not be also recognized in another country. What we have with intra-EU transfer licenses, it's something unbelievable. But it's not so easy to remove those obstacles. We are now going with the first omnibus on simplification, trialogue. So really challenges to convince all the member states are quite big. But that is exactly what industries are complaining about, all those existing daily obstacles which we need to remove, and which are also obstacle for having a single defense market in general. Second, still money is coming, but industries are complaining that contracts are very short-term, and there is lack of long-term visibility. This is again, what we need to look how we can do that, how we can really bring for industries much more of assurances or guarantees that this demand will stay for a longer time up to some kind of higher level, and that is what together with member states we need to do. And the last point, which some industries are speaking themselves about, that they are still producing what they call haute couture production. Very technologically very advanced, very expensive, and very difficult to ramp up. And they are saying themselves that, well, they need to move into what they call good enough. And that is what Ukrainians are producing, good enough production. And in some cases, really, it's quite a surprise. Well, I said before that still Russia is outproducing us. And when you are looking into some numbers, you can see very, very interesting tendency. For example, interesting and sometimes very tragic tendency. Russians are produced during last year around 1,200 cruise missiles. All of them landed in Ukraine. Europe produced around 250 cruise missiles. That is publicly available data. And Ukraine started to produce their own cruise missiles, so-called Flamingo, last year. During this year, they are going to produce 700. And I see really what is the difference, because our cruise missiles are haute couture, Ukrainians are producing good enough. And and in Moscow they feel and they fear that those good enough missiles can be quite a challenge for Russia itself.
So would you say that it is now up to the capitals to try to look into these problems through their procurement processes?
Well, it's really some kind of strategic issue. We always are talking about, when we're talking about industry, we're talking about transformation of the industry. We expect that industries will change, that they will start to produce good enough, cheaper and easier to scale up, that they will innovate and so on. But we cannot forget demand side. So we are looking always about how to transform supply, but we are not looking into how to transform the demand. Yeah. And I said before, and this is why I am saying that when I see Ukrainian achievements, I see really one thing. And Ukrainians, they always were speaking in the same way. Their message last year, I remember I was talking with them, some of those people who were, from the very beginning of the war, involved into development of what now is called drone army, with so-called cluster of innovative defense companies, Brave One. And they said very simple conclusions. They said, if at the very beginning we would listen to our military commanders, we would not have drone army. But since, they started to build their drone production at the very beginning, because their defense industry was not so strong, then I see as big really benefits that both President Zelensky and at first General Zaluzhny and now General Syrsky, they understood the need of those transformative technologies. And they changed, and that started to change their war doctrines. And they now are so strong. In our case, when we are still very much procuring what our big primes traditionally were producing, I see that in some way also influences our defense doctrines, war doctrines, and we are not transforming our demand.
And one last question very quickly, and we have to be a bit creative, but if you had more power over defense policy, what would be the first thing that you would change or you would do?
As you know, it would be good to see some kind of silver bullet decision. But usually there are no such silver bullet decisions. So that's like let's not believe in some kind of those miracles.
We won't get delusional then. Thank you very much, Commissioner Kubilius, for joining
a lot.
us today for our European Industry Forum. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.